Okay, so let us begin. A very good evening to all the guests present in this meeting. What we call Indian Council of Philosophical Research Study Circle meetings. So this meeting is the fourth meeting of the sequence. We are glad to have Dr. Nirmalya Guha, who is an associate professor in the Department of Humanistic Studies in IIT BHU. Sir, you are most welcome to this meeting. We are grateful for your consent to deliver a talk in this sequence of study circle meetings. I extend heartiest welcome to all the guests and audience. I will request our head of the school, Mr. Sumant Sarthi Sharma, to formally welcome all the guests and our distinguished speaker. Sumanta sir, kindly offer a formal welcome to all our guests and speakers.
In fact, it is an honor as well as a privilege to welcome so many people whom we know. I can see Professor Arun Kumar Sharma, our teacher at IIT Kanpur. We have studied under him and it's a pleasure to host you, sir. Similarly, I can see Dr. D. Mukhopadhyay, who has been the Vice Chancellor of our university, as well as the Dean of Humanity and Social Sciences at Sri Mata Vaishno Devi University. We are also happy that, in fact, it is Dr. Tiwari and Dr. Madhumangal Chaturvedi who have instituted the ICPR study circle at our university. And this is the fourth lecture, as he was telling. It is right. So the last lecture, if I remember it rightly, was by Ambika Dutt Sharma ji, who gave an amazing presentation, as well as a very binding presentation, I will say. So, and in that line, I can see that today Dr. Nirmalya Guha, who is an associate professor at IIT BHU, is presenting on knowledge and salvation. And I can see other our old students as well as our existing students as well, and also other people whom has joined. So I will formally welcome all the faculty members as well as students who have joined us in a very short notice, because we could not spread this message because it took some time. We got engaged in a lot of other activities, and therefore we could not spread this message as well as inform you before. But thankfully it's all done, and we were also facing a lot of internet troubles or problems since morning. We were having a couple of webinars today. Since it's a holiday at our university, because it's an accession day of the Jammu and Kashmir to the Union of India. So we were having a holiday or a leave, you can say, but we were very hard pressed with lots and lots of activities since morning. And thankfully, the internet has come back and we can host Dr. Nirmalya Guha. So with the permission of our former head, that is Dr. Anil Kumar Tiwari, who is actually hosting this event, I welcome all of you and also look forward to an amazing presentation from Dr. Nirmalya Guha. So Nirmalya Guha ji, I request you to kindly present.
Thank you very much, Professor Sharma. And
just a second, Dr. Nirmalya. Let me just introduce the speaker for our audience, so that they are familiar with the background. So thank you, Sumanta sir, for welcoming our guests. We have audience from, in fact, Baramulla to Tamil Nadu and Kerala. And we can see the range from northeast to west also. So we have diversity of audience coming from different parts of our country, and some are still joining in between. So let me, for the information of all our guests, introduce the speaker, today's speaker. as you are informed that this is the fourth study circle meeting of Indian Council of Philosophical Research. We are grateful to the Council for allowing us to conduct this meeting. We started our meeting by Professor Kishore Kumar Chakravarti, who was the first speaker in the study circle meeting. And then second meeting was conducted by Professor Pradeep Gokhale from University of Pune. And then third meeting was conducted by Professor Ambikadas Sharma from the Central University, Hari Singh Gaur, Central University, Sagar. So all three distinguished speakers delivered wonderful talks. And today we have, again, very wonderful and nice person, Dr. Nirmalya Guha, who is an associate professor in the Department of Humanistic Studies, IIT BHU. Dr. Guha is graduated from the University of Calcutta with his Bachelor of Arts degree. And then Dr. Guha obtained his master's degree in applied linguistics from the University of Hyderabad. After his degree in applied linguistics, he moved to the University of Madras for his MA philosophy program, and he got his MA degree in philosophy from the University of Madras. And then he moved to Lancaster University in the United Kingdom for his PhD. There he worked on the problem of postulation in Indian philosophy. He was also a postdoctoral Nehru Fulbright Fellow, and his host institution was University of Texas, Austin, USA. My familiarity with his expertise and his personal meeting started from IIT Kanpur, where he joined as assistant professor in 2009. And from there, he moved to Presidency University, Kolkata. And then again, from there, he moved to Manipal Academy of Higher Education, Manipal. And finally, he is now in IIT BHU as associate professor since May 2018. He is one of the wonderful philosophers from India, I must say. He has widely published. He is one of the finest minds in working in Indian philosophy. He has published so many articles in the Journal of Indian Council of Philosophical Research. I have read his several articles in Journal of Indian Philosophy. He is one of the leading thinkers of Indian philosophy, working in particularly Indian logic and epistemology. So it is my great honor, in fact, and I must express my gratitude to Dr. Nirmalya Guha for agreeing to deliver a talk in this study circle meeting. So without delaying much, taking much time, let me request Dr. Guha to deliver his talk, and I welcome all the guests and audience, and I request all of you to keep your questions ready for Dr. Guha, and we will have question answer session after the lecture. Dr. Guha, you can take your time. So we don't have any time limit in that way, but you can choose your time. So welcome, Dr. Guha, for your lecture.
Thank you very much, Professor Tiwari. And also, I can see very old friends and colleagues, and trust me, I'm meeting them after years. So I'm actually very, very happy to meet them again. So today, I never spoke about Prachina Nyāya. I never spoke about salvation. I always thought that it was a very personal thing. I always hesitated to speak about this topic, salvation. But then when Professor Tiwari wanted me to speak about this, I didn't know, I was a bit hesitant, but then I thought that I should. So like, at least, academically, we also should look at it. So my source is mostly Nyāya Bhashya and also Vātsyāyana. As I said, for the first time, I'm working on Prachina Nyāya, so to say. And then if we have time, we'll see a bit of Tattva Chintamani of Gangesha. So, Professor Tiwari, can you see the screen?
It's clear. It's visible to all of us.
Great. Then we start.
Yeah, please.
Now, the question is, first of all, where to locate Nyāya epistemology on the map of Indian academia or Indian knowledge system, if you call it. In the ancient days, we had sciences. We had actually four great sciences. So, Trayi, that is the three Vedas, Ruk, Sama, and Yaju. Dandaniti, which is basically polity, Varta, which is trade, commerce, and agriculture, and Anvikshiki, that is logic or systematic epistemology. A paryaya, a synonym for that, is Nyāya Shastra. Now, our ancient scholars believed that Anvikshiki, all these four sciences, including logic, had a divine origin. So here is a small verse from Mahabharata, which says that Trayi Chanvikshiki Chaiva Varta Cha Bharatarshabha Dandaniti-scha Vipula Vidyas Tatra Nidarshitaha. Now in Shanti Parva, there is a story which actually describes how Lord Shiva kind of came up, authored a book with 100,000 chapters, and that has all these four great sciences. We know that most of the sciences, like we believe, many of us, especially the classical people, that Lord Shiva came up with with all this, the source. He's the main source of most of these sciences. And Srimad Bhagavatam attributes the authorship of Anvikshiki and all four sciences to the Adi Purusha, Shri Bhagavan. And both Manu Dharma Shastra of Manu and Artha Shastra advise the king to learn these four sciences. That is Trayi, Varta, Dandaniti, and Anvikshiki. Now, we can see that, during the ancient time, we had four sciences. Then we see that developed into 14 or 18 sciences, right? So, Yajnavalkya Smriti would talk about 18. Vishnu Purana would talk about 14 such sciences. Now, I think that happened in the classical period. So, the Bhashya, Nyāya Bhashya, both Bhashya and Vartika were written. They're very, very old texts. Even Vachaspati Mishra says that Udyodhakara, the Vartikakara, was very ancient. So think of it, even for Vachaspati Mishra, Udyodhakara was an ancient writer. So that time we had four sciences. Now, definitely Nyāya Shastra, or it is basically epistemology, we'll talk about it. It pre-existed Gautama Akshapada, the Sutrakara. He systematized and codified it. Here is a very brief sketch of the Shastra. So the beginning is Gautama Akshapada's Nyāya Sutra, which consists of more than 500 aphorisms. Then comes Nyāya Bhashya, which is by Vātsyāyana. Then Nyāya Vartika by Udyodhakara. And Nyāya Vartika Tatparya by Vachaspati Mishrapada. And finally Tatparya Parishuddhi by Udayana Acharya. So then, we know the history. Then Nyāya would merge with Vaisheshika, and we would have Navya Nyāya and all that stuff. It would be the great time, a time that would present the Neshopadhyaya and all other great Naiyāyikas. Now, I would call Nyāya epistemology, or for that case, perhaps Indian epistemology, a pragmatic epistemology. It is always with the summum bonum, with at least, the idea of a summum bonum, highest good, and also a well-defined instrument for attaining it. So the means to it, if we like. For Anvikshiki, the highest good is mokṣa, is salvation. We'll see that. But the point is, for each great science, each of the four great sciences, there is a Nyāya, that is a summum bonum, or the highest good, and also some described means to reach that. Mostly it's a cognitive means. It's not, it's not a material thing. So it is mostly tattva jnana. It's the knowledge of the truth, of the elements involved in that science. And it's like to be a master chef, you master the ingredients, you know your ingredients very well, then only you can cook well. That's the idea. Here is a table to show that for the Vedas, Trayi, heaven or Swarga is the highest good. And the means to that is the knowledge of sacrifices, Agnihotradi. For Varta, the highest goal is good harvest, and also making money for a businessman. It is definitely being rich, and the knowledge of land, etc., takes care of the knowledge of money and other things. Would be the special knowledge that is required for it. That would be means to it, right? Means to the attainment of the highest good. For Dandaniti, that is politics. Victory definitely is the goal, the highest good. And the means to that is the application of Sama, Dana, Keda, Danda. So these are not just that, many others. But the thing is not that, we all of us do some kind of politics all our life. But the point is the king has to do it, in a very different way, right? So the king masters it. So it is, Samadana Danda Bheda, all of us know it's about, the policy, the sort of the policy of, relationship. It is about the relationship between the enemy and the rivals and the king and stuff like that. For Anvikshiki, that is our main Shastra logic here. In this case, the goal or the highest good is salvation, which is apavarga. And the means to that is knowledge of the self, etc. And it's not this, of course, the main thing is self, but then there are associated things. We'll see that. So here is a small portion. I will not read all the Sanskrit texts because that will take up time, but here I think we should. Tad idam tattva jnanam nishteyasa adhigama artham. I'm splitting. Yathavidyam veditavyam. Now look, yathavidyam veditavyam. So the nishteyasa is a variable. The highest good is a variable. It depends on the Shastra. So yathavidyam. According to the Vidya, you go for the nishreyasa. You go for the highest goal. Ihatu adhyatma vidyayam atmadi jnanam tattva jnanam. In this case, in the context of Anvikshiki, in the context of logic or epistemology, which is an Atma Vidya, which is the science of the self, the means is always the Atma Tattva Jnanam, the knowledge of the self, etc. And Nihishreyasa Adhigamaha Apavarga Praptihi, and the attainment of salvation is the apavarga. And the table has been shown. The same thing is there in Vartika, Nyāya Vartika. I've given it. So I am reading the last part of it. Ihatu adhyatma vidyayam, that is anvikshikyam, which is given in a bracket. Atma jnanam, tattva jnanam, nishresadhigamo apavarga praptihi iti. So this is by Uddyotakara. So definitely we understand that the excellence in, how to excel in some Shastra, one has to attain the highest goal. That would be excellent, right? For that Shastra. So now, this is the background I just wanted to give. Now we go for the definitions, technical terms, and presuppositions of our Shastra. So basically it is about Paribhasha and Adhikarana Siddhanta. Adhikarana Siddhanta and Adhikarana Siddhanta is an assumption without accepting which we cannot move on. All the time it is not spelled out. Not that all the time they tell what it is. Sometimes we have to kind of extract it out. But many adhikarana siddhantas, many presuppositions are clearly stated in the Shastra, which are very important, which are relevant for our topic. So here is one. I'm reading now the translation, English translation of it, not the text. Anvikshiki or Nyaya Vidya is the examination of objects captured through perception and sacred testimony. That means Pratyaksha and Agama. This is from Nyāya Bhashya. Here, Anu, if you split the word Anvikshiki, you have Anu and Iksha. Anu means after, and Iksha means examination. The point I would like to make here is, here, the object is always taken in a special sense. It is not the object of ordinary epistemology. It's a very special object. What kind of an object? Now, also, they say, this is once again from Nyāya Bhashya. NB stands for Nyāya Bhashya. Pramanaihi artha parikshanam nyāya. So, Nyāya epistemology is the examination of artha through epistemic instruments. Epistemic instrument, I translate pramana as epistemic instrument, such as perception, inference, etc. Once again, Bhashyakara says, arthastu sukham sukha hetuscha, dukham dukha hetuscha. Artha is pleasure or the cause of pleasure, and it is pain or the cause of pain. Now look, this is the technical sense in which the word artha is used here. We are not dealing in Nyāya epistemology with just any object. We are dealing with objects of interest. An object I desire to get, that is, I have jihasa for it, or I want to get rid of. So, abhipsa for it, my desire to get it, or my jihasa for it, that is, I want to get rid of it. I want to avoid it. So, objects are of three types, right? So, things are of three types. Either I'm neutral to it, that is, I call this motivation neutral object, upeksha buddhi vishaya, and an artha, which I want, that is abhipsita, and an artha I want to get rid of, that is jihasita. But for epistemology, what does epistemology do? Nyāya epistemology, it examines those arthas which I want to grab or which I want to get rid of, not anything else. Now, this is very, very important. This, this emotional factor, or that make it a pragmatic discipline. This emotional factor makes Nyāya epistemology, different from Western epistemology or many other epistemologies. Now, once again, Nyāya Sutra, as Nyāya Sutra states, this is another assumption. Tattva jnanat nihishreya sadhikamaha. So the attainment of the highest good happens only through the knowledge of tattva, that is the knowledge of the truth of the things involved. So this is a very, very important assumption, as I said. In order to cook great dishes, in order to be a master chef, I need to know my ingredients very, very well. Otherwise, I can be an ordinary cook. I am not a master cook. Therefore, in order to master the science of politics, one needs to know about political friendship and enmity, right? One has to know their enemies and allies very well. Similarly, in Nyāya epistemology, one has to know, the self, suffering, and destruction, since its main goal is salvation, which by definition is cessation of suffering. Nyāya epistemology helps us know about the self. Therefore, it is an adhyatma vidya. This is very, very important. For other three vidyas, the goals are different. But for anvikshiki, for epistemology, especially Nyāya epistemology, the goal is salvation. And for this, we need to know the basic ingredients of it. So mainly the self and things like pleasure, pain, and also the theory of destruction, abhava. We need to now see all these things. Another very important assumption of the Naiyāyika, tatra na anupalabdhe na nirnite arthe nyāyah pravartate kim tarhi samshayite arthe. One uses Nyāya only when one wants to investigate about something which one does not fully know. One does not use Nyāya when one knows something well, or when one does not know something at all. So this is another very important thing, right? Because all of us want to get rid of suffering. That is granted, we understand. Now, the cessation of suffering is an object of interest. It becomes an artha. Now, let's investigate about it. So, cessation of suffering or salvation, that's the minimum definition of it. We are not talking about any heavy definition. For example, take the Advaita Vedanta definition. It's very heavy. It's much heavier than this definition. This is a minimal definition. Cessation or destruction of suffering. The ultimate destruction of suffering. Now, sacred testimony or Shastra tells us that salvation is possible. That is very interesting, right? So there is a chance that I can get rid of suffering, but one is not sure. Therefore, one examines the possibility of attaining salvation. Epistemology is the means to that. We'll see how it is the means to that. And another one is under the presumption, once again from Bhashya, is this: Pramanakaha artha pratipattau pravritti samarthyad arthavat pramanam. Here is a translation. After the attainment of the cognition about an object of interest through an epistemic instrument, so pramanataha artha pratipattau, the epistemic expectation or pravritti gets fulfilled. We'll talk about it. This is the pragmatic success, pravritti samarthya or samvada of the cognition. Hence, the epistemic instrument apprehends the object as it is. So that's my conclusion. What is it? An epistemic instrument, a pramana, always gets its object as it is. How? Because otherwise, it would not fulfill my epistemic expectation. We will now see what it means. One very important thing is here, the object as it is not the nomenon. Definitely not. Here it has got a special meaning. Here the object is the trio of property, property holder, and relation. That is dharma, dharmin, sambandha. We'll look at it. Now look at it. Here is an object, whatever it is. I look at it and I cognize this is a snake. Now if you analyze it by using Nyāya, you get a qualificant, which would be the meaning of the word this, whatever is referred to as this. And the qualifier here would be snakeness. That's the property which I'm predicating to this thing, the thing I see right in front of me. And then this cognition is valid since the property that appears as the qualifier, that is snakeness, really resides in that which appears as the qualificant, the meaning of this, through inherence, right? So my expectation is in this, the thing I see in this, snakeness would reside through inherence. And that's the case, right? So, and I go and check and I find that, yes, that's the case. Therefore, my cognition is valid. It is just because my expectation is fulfilled by it. And it is invalid in this case. What is it? In this case, the qualificant, once again, is the same. The cognition is the same. This is a snake, but the qualifier is snakeness. Although the thing is not a snake, because snakeness does not reside in this through the relation of inherence, my epistemic expectation here in this case cannot be fulfilled, right? Therefore, it is an unsuccessful cognition, it's invalid. So this is how we look at it. So this is the minimal meaning of the word artha. First of all, it has an emotive, I would say, shade. And secondly, it also involves some kind of, structure, some kind of structure in reality, a tripartite structure, a property holder, and a relation through which the property is related to the property holder. Now, so this is, we are done with the presuppositions. We require a few, we also add a few later. Now we talk about the story of salvation, for which the self is the most important ingredient. This is from Nyāya Bhashya of Vātsyāyana. The entire narrative has been is based on Nyāya Bhashya. So here is a an ordinary epistemic agent, our subject, right? So you can call him a jiva, the self in samsara. And samsara is very difficult to translate samsara, but samsara consists of one's arthas, one's objects of interest, not just objects, right? It is not just the reality. It is not just the world. It is the world of experience, right? It's the world of enjoyment. It's the world of suffering and pain and pleasure, right? So it consists of things that give me either pain or pleasure. Now, here is our agent, subject. Now, Nyāya assumes that every agent has got, a self, or Atman. What is it? Very difficult to kind of to define it, but we can infer it. This is the most sort of problematic part of it. Although it is difficult to define it, you can infer. We'll look for that. Now, it has got some special attributes, Atman or Guna, special properties. What are those? Jnana, cognition, ichha, desire, dvesha, aversion, kriti, attempt, which is a subjective attempt. Before the body starts doing something, this is a subjective attempt that is born in the self according to the Nyāya system. So these are the unique attributes of the self. These are adventitious properties. That is, these are not essential to the self. So not that, these must be there in a self. The inhere in the self. Once the self attains salvation, it stops housing these properties. It will actually stop having these properties after salvation. And also you require the mind, which is both sort of a channel. We'll talk about it, an epistemic channel, and a sense organ. How is it? Now, mind qua mind, manas, is just a connection. It is required because we need to understand attention. We cannot do many things at one moment, right? It's about attention. How do I explain attention? In order to explain attention, we say that when myself can be connected only with one sense organ at a time, not with two or three, only one. And the channel is the mind. So when the mind now, when the mind switches to some other sense organ, so first say it is the eye, then it is the ear. So I would first see and then I will listen to things. I don't do that at the same time. Sometimes we may have an illusion that we are doing it together. It is like the Alata Chakra Darshana. It's it's the fire circle we see, right? If somebody takes a torch and rotates it very fast, we see one fire ring. So but it is illusory, not that the entire ring has got fire. The fire is at one place, but it seems that it's everywhere. Now, mind qua sense organ is the instrument for attaining pleasure, pain, and cognition. Thus, mind has a dual role. We need this much of background to understand the theory of self and perception. Now, we get back to our story. We have, as jivas, as epistemic agents, we have a lot of misconceptions about everything. Mithya jnana, according to the Naiyāyikas. What kind of mithya jnana? We think my body is the self. There is no other self over and above the body. We also think good food gives me pleasure, whatever it is, anything, any artha which I desire, it gives me pleasure, and that's the best I can do. There is nothing more in life. Feelings never cease to exist. Always, as long as I'm alive, as long as my soul or my self exists, I'll be having feelings. I'll not be born again. This is the last. I was not born before. I will not be born again. These, according to Naiyāyikas, are mithya jnanas, misconceptions. We have it. Due to that, because we have these misconceptions, we develop some kind of psychological defects. So, and the defects are of three types. Desire. I have desire for some object. I have aversion for some, and I have mindless attachment, moha, for some. Right? It is neither desire, not aversion. It is like I stick to it. I don't know why. So moha. So these three defects, psychological defects, I do have because I have misconceptions. And now what happens when I see something, an object, say a wonderful platter of food, and how do I see it? First, myself gets connected with the I through the mind. As I said, the mind is a channel. So that's the first connection. Here is a very famous passage from Tarkasamgraha Deepika, which is a primer of Indian logic. Atma manasa sanyujyate, mana indriyena, indriyam arthena tataha pratyaksha jnanam utpadyate. First, the soul gets connected, the self gets connected with the mind, and the mind with the sense organ, and then the sense organ with the object, and finally, as a result of that, pratyaksha jnana, or the perceptual cognition, is born in the self. That is how that is how I perceive. Well, there is a platter, wonderful platter of food. So this is the mechanism of it. So I see it, and now I have a psychophysical activity, and which is called pravritti. So pravritti covers both. One, the activity I do, I grab it, I go to grab it. So first, an attempt is born in myself. This attempt is a subjective thing. It cannot be seen. But what can be seen is the consequence of that, the physical attempt. I go to get it, to grab it. That's the activity I do. And then another very important Indian assumption, that is, every activity causes some kind of bondage. The bondage comes either in the form of merit, dharma, or demerit, but both bind me. This is very, very important. Let it be merit or demerit. They both bind me because I did something. I have to kind of reap the consequence, the fruit of that. I have to enjoy the fruit of that, good or bad. So that is called pravritti, which comes from the defects, right? Raga, dvesha, or moha. And because I have this, this craving, this pravritti, I know now I have kind of, I have this dharma, that is, I have some merit or demerit, which I have to finally, exhaust, right? So because of that, I'm born again at birth. And that causes dukkha, that causes suffering. So this is how this chain, this causal chain has been understood. Now, what is suffering? Both pain and pleasure are suffering. So pleasure, is suffering. It is because, this also binds at the end of that. So as they say, dukkha sambandhat dukkham. So sukha is also dukkha. So pleasure is also suffering. We're not saying pleasure is pain, because the object of pleasure, I desire, right? So that way it is anukula, it is favorable, but it is ultimately suffering because it binds me. Finally it will cause suffering. And of course, pain is pain, pain is suffering. Both bind the self, and both kind of, by doing something, I earn either some merit or demerit. And as a result of that, I'll be born again. Now, once again, I tell, I must remember, all of us must remember, this is a very, very heavy presupposition of most Indian philosophers, except the Charvakas. Almost everybody believes in this theory of karma, that karma binds. Our actions bind us somehow by generating some kind of a causal seed, right, in the form of dharma or adharma, which will give finally its fruit, which I have to enjoy either in a positive or in a negative way. So this is the causal chain: misconception, mithya jnana, defect, dosha, which is desire, aversion, or mindless attachment, then activity, which is pravritti, which is what I do after I see an artha, because I had desire for it or aversion for it, I act, right? And then finally I have merit, demerit, which is also part of pravritti, the third element. Due to that, I'm born again and again. So the birth cycle goes on for that. And because I'm born, I have suffering. So this is the chain, the causal chain of it. And due to that, the entire samsara, the world of experience, is projected. We are not talking about the world of reality, but of our experience. So that kind of makes this platter of food interesting and artha. That makes gold artha, right? An ornament. That makes this thing, a terrible thing, a scary thing, right? And artha, I want to get rid of. So the samsara, or the world of experience, consists of arthas, and arthas are, in that sense, projections, right, of my own desire and aversion. But so how do I get rid of the samsara, which finally causes pain, suffering? It is this: I have the knowledge of truth, right? The knowledge of truth, of my main ingredients about myself. Whatever misconception I have must be dispelled by the knowledge of truth. So the moment I have it, so the first thing that goes is the misconception, the mithya jnana about the world, about the idea that yes, I can eat whatever I like and I can be happy all my life. And yes, myself is nothing but my body, so I must satisfy it, or my senses, right? There is nothing else I can do. So this misconception is gone. The moment it is gone, in a sense, the samsara, the experience world, disappears. I'm not saying the reality disappears. The reality remains the same, but they no longer remain my arthas, right? So artha rupena tattu idanim nashtam. And then as a result of that, even the body, the Hatma Buddhi is gone. So my understanding that, well, my body is the self, nothing else. I don't even own my own body. In a sense, I quit ownership of my body. And because the cause is gone, the effect is also gone. What is the effect here? The immediate effect is the effects. That is desire, aversion, or mindless attachment. Because this cause is gone, my pravritti is gone. That is, the desire to act, or the attempt to act, and the action and the consequence of that in the form of merit or demerit. Because that is gone, the birth cycle now gets inactivated. I'm not born again. Because I stop being born again and again, I stop having suffering, and I'm a free self. This is the story of salvation according to Nyāya Bhashya, and most of our schools that believe in the self and the cycle of birth and all that stuff. Now, the source here is mainly two sutras. One is Dukkha. You see, all these elements I named are there: Dukkha, Janma, Pravritti, Dosha, Mithya Jnananam, Tad Anantara Apayad Apavargaha. Sorry, I missed Uttaruttara Apaye, Tad Anantara Apayad Apavargaha. This is Nyāya Sutra 112. And Tad Atyanta Vimoksho Apavargaha. This is Nyāya Sutra 1122. So this was my source. But then why epistemology? What is epistemology doing here in this great narrative? Here it is. The answer definitely is not very direct. We have to extract from the Shastra and from the words of the Shastrakara. We understand that the self houses internal attributes such as cognition, desire, aversion, attempt, etc. Salvation puts an end to all these. This is how suffering ends. The end of suffering is something we all look for. These are the things we have seen. That makes kind of a system, kind of a fourfold scheme, having the thing one wants to get rid of. What is it? In this case, suffering, then the destruction of it. And basically the destruction here is the knowledge of things as they are. The tatvajnana is the very end of the suffering. And the means to attain the tatvajnana, the knowledge of truth, and the final goal, that is salvation, the last moment of it. These four are called arthapadas. And this fourfold scheme is very important for all of us. And this scheme involves the self, body, senses, objects of interest, cognition, mind, merit and demerit, defects, birth cycle, consequence, which is dharma, phala, suffering and salvation. These are the relevant objects of knowledge, the prameya of Nyāya Shastra. All these things are mentioned in the sutra I have given, that is 119. You can see Atma, Sharira, Indriya, Artha, Buddhi, Manaha, Pravritti, Dosha, Pratyabhava, Phala, Dukha, Apavargaha tu Prameyam. One has to know these elements as they are. We have seen that. But how to know the self? The first thing, which is the most important among these 12, right? I need to know the self. What is the problem of knowing the self? Tatra Atma, from Bhashya this is, Tatra Atma tavat pratyakshato na gruhyate. Saking aptopadesha matrad iva pratipadyata iti neti ucyate. Anumanacha pratipattavya iti katham. So then the Nyāya Sutra comes, Ichha Dvesha Prayatna Sukha Dukha Jnanani Atmano Lingam iti. A translation, the self cannot be perceived. Natavat Atma Pratyakshato Grihiyate. Is it known only through the sacred testimony, through Shastra? No. It can also be known through inference. How? This is the most important thing. The self can be inferred. How? The reason for the inference consists of desire. Here, reason is a technical term. Like, and when you have this hill has fire since it has smoke. The smoke is the reason for this inference. The target is fire, and the site is the hill. The reason of the inference consists of desire, aversion, attent, pleasure, pain, and cognition. Inferring the self, a philosophical problem. I think this is the reason, in order to fix this issue, we have epistemology. Now, how does ordinary inference work? It works like this. The subject goes somewhere and they look at the world, they observe that everything having smoke has fire. You can see that in a kitchen, Mahanasa. You can see that in a Yajñashala, which is a sacrificial altar, everywhere and everywhere else. So thus the subject ascertains that anything having smoke has fire. This is called the Vyakti Jnana, the knowledge of pervision. And this is formed this way after having a good observation of the world. With that observation, with that conclusion that anything having smoke has fire, the subject goes somewhere, finds a hill there, and the hill has a few clouds of smoke. And from that, after seeing that, the subject remembers, well, anything having smoke has fire. And finally, they infer fire. So, and then they recognize the hill has fire. This is how normally ordinary inference takes place. Here, the subject has to understand that the hill is a member of the same set that has the sacrificial altar and kitchen, right? You make a set. You understand that the hill is like the sacrificial altar and the kitchen where I saw both smoke and fire, right? These are all physical objects that can be shown by ostension. That is Shringa Grahika Nyāya, holding the horns of a cow. What is a cow? I can hold it, by its horns and bring it to you. Here is a cow. That's called Shringa Grahika Nyāya. But for an ordinary human, it is not possible to perceive the self. One does not know a priori that it is a substance, dravya. How to infer then the self? This is the problem. I cannot group it a priori with other things I have seen, with other substances I have seen. Therefore, also there are a lot of misconceptions about the self. Through the general observation-based inference, or samanyato drushta anumiti, one knows that an attribute resides in a substance through the relation of inherence. That is known. Cognition, desire, etc. are understood as attributes, or gunas, since they reside in their locus as long as they exist, and they're not activities. That's the definition of an attribute. That is, it has to reside in something else, as long as it exists. So, but that definition also, accommodates activities, because they also have to reside in something as long as they exist. But we know that cognition, desire, etc. are not activities. Therefore, there must be gunas, there must be attributes, right? They cannot be categorized otherwise. So you categorize them first, cognition, etc. The Vishesha Guna or the Atma Gunas, the attribute, unique attributes of the self. Now the question is, do they reside in the physical body? Well, materialists would say yes. But that has problems. The logician doubts that. Mostly because of two reasons. One, the sacred testimony, Shastra, thinks that they're housed in the self, not in the material body. Also, one can ordinarily perceive that the body alone cannot house all these attributes. A dead body doesn't, for example. Now the logician wants to know whether the self really exists over and above the body and mind and senses. They need the science for argumentation, since ordinary knowledge does not help them understand this. Ordinary knowledge helps them understand other things, right? Our day-to-day life has a lot of things, and for that our ordinary knowledge would do, but not for the knowledge of self, right? Ordinary knowledge is absolutely clueless as far as that is concerned. We need special cognitive tools for that. We need some special vidya. The logician thinks that there are various misconceptions about the self. For example, it is the physical body. It is nothing but the stream of momentary cognitions and feelings like the hairs. Luna punarjata kesha adivat. So for example, I see you with a lot of hair on your head, and I see you after 10 days. We think, I think it's the same hair, right? But that's not true. Your old hairs are gone, at least most of them, many of them are gone, and new hairs are born, right? But the stream, right? There's a stream of individual hairs. That's why we think it's the same hair, but that's not true. Maybe that is the case of the self. We think there is one self, but there is no one thing. There are cognitive episodes, there are feelings and cognitions and all that stuff, which are all momentary. We think that it is one thing. It's like a film, right? In a movie, for example, if you look at the film, Gregory Peck, it is not one Gregory Peck. It consists of several thousands of Gregory Pecks. Right? In order to move his hand, you perhaps need more than 300 Gregory pegs on the film. So this is one misconception, that maybe it's the stream of momentary mental states. And also one may think that it is nothing but the sense organs. One may think that it is nothing but the mind, right? The logician now has to show that each one is wrong. In order to do that, they need, one, a rigorous science for argumentation, which is basically your Anvikshiki Tarkashastra. Two, the knowledge of the physical body and senses and mind and practically everything, right? Because unless I know other things, how do I know that these are not myself, right? In order to do that, I need this. Now, all these things are mentioned in the sutra and the bhashya I've already mentioned, 119. Now, one clue, as my goal is to show that because you need this spatial knowledge, you need to know the self, you need to understand other objects. You have epistemology. That's my that is what I wanted to establish. Now, one hint comes from Prashastapada, the commentator of Vaisheshika Shastra, who says this sutra, this is not a sutra, this is a sentence by him. I'm reading a translation. Salvation is attained through the knowledge of similarity and dissimilarity of the substance, attribute, activity, universal, unique, particular, and inherence. You see, all the things now are kind of covered here. Like each thing, you think of a thing, like you think of anything that will be categorized under these things, all positive things, not absence. Absence is a different category altogether. Now, why is dissimilarity, or rather the knowledge of dissimilarity, important? It is because I cannot establish the special cognitive attributes like cognition, pain, pleasure, etc. I cannot locate these attributes in ordinary substances. I need to understand that the self is unique. It is not the body or the mind or any other thing, right? For that, I need to know all those things. Then I understand how they're different from the self. That is why the knowledge of dissimilarity is very important. This is not explicitly mentioned in any Shastra. Why the knowledge of dissimilarity? I have actually looked for it, both in Nyāya Bhashya, in Prashastapada Bhashya. Also, I looked at Sridhara's Nyāya Kandali. They're not very clear on it, but we understand why this is said. How does the logician prove that the self is not a stream of momentary cognitive events? Now, this is from Nyāya Bhashya on Sutra 10. I'm translating it. After finding pleasure in the object X, when the self finds X, it tends to grab X. That desire is not possible unless there is a single self that finds various objects and looks for those again. That desire is the reason for inferring the self. This would not happen had it been a case of different cognitions without being connected to the same self. That would be like different subjects. For example, you saw something and you enjoyed it. I would not desire that because it is your object, right? You enjoyed it. So, unless you have one self, right? One underlying self, one unity, it is not possible that you tasted something and you want to grab it again. You see it, you are motivated to move, to do something, to grab it. You have to imagine that, well, there is one continuous presence that kind of, that runs through all these things. So my experience, my desire for having that object again, my perception of the object, and my activity, right? So all these things are witnessed, or all these things are in a sense bound by one existence. That unity is the self. So also the logician has to find defects in the arguments of their opponents. That is how they have the theory of logical fallacy, tatvabhasa. All these are not possible without special knowledge. That knowledge is Nyāya Shastra, or epistemology. On the other hand, the systematic epistemology of Nyāya helps the logician examine the possibility of attaining salvation. So it goes both ways. In a sense, I need epistemology because I need to investigate about salvation. On the other hand, I can fathom the possibility of attaining salvation through my newfound epistemological knowledge. I can evaluate all the scope of it, right, of salvation. Now, this is the old story. How does it translate into the new story? That is, in neologic, this is represented in a slightly different way. Now, we understand that, at the time of, Gangesha, there were great opponents. So there was the great Advaitin or Sri Harsha. There were great Buddhist scholars like Ratnakirti and Dhanashrita. There were Neo-Prabhakaras and Neo-Mimamsakas. Gangesha never names them, those Neo-Prabhakaras, but he had texts. So, and all these great opponents, they came up with new objections to each and everything the Naiyāyikas said. So you need a new epistemology. So you can see that it was not enough to have the old epistemology. That is why the Nyāya school emerged. Now look at the new set of questions. Here is Gangesha. I'm not reading this from Pramanyavada, Jnaptivada. I'm not reading it out. I'm translating it rather so that we can save some time. I will take maybe 4 or 5 minutes more and then I'm done. The compassionate sage Gautama, who wanted to get rid of this world, immersed in the mud of suffering, Dukha panka nimagnam jagat. This is how the text goes. Established the greatest of the great 18 sciences, the science of logic. Now, 18 sciences, I know this is not anymore 4. This will have all the Vedas, all the Vedangas, of course, the Vedantas, and and all that stuff. And thus it will be 18, and also the Dharurveda, Ayurveda, and all that stuff. This is the science of logic. In order to motivate the right-minded one, Prekshavat, he composed this aphorism. The supreme good is attained through the knowledge of the 16 elements, beginning with the epistemic instrument, Pramanadi. All these elements depend on the epistemic instrument. So the knowledge of the Pramana is the most important. What is the Pramana? The means to have valid cognition. For example, perception. So what is the means? My eyes, my sense organs. For inference, it is the knowledge of Vyapti, as I said. In the case of smoke, fire, it is the very knowledge that any locus of smoke is a locus of fire. In the case of upamana, that is analogical knowledge, it is the atidesha vakya, or the sentence having the comparison, something like gavaya, a gavaya looks like my cow, is very sentence, encodes that knowledge. And for shabda, it is the words. For testimony, it is the words, right? So these are the means, these are the instruments for valid cognition. Every discussion, every discourse in this science depends on the discussion or on the consideration of pramanas. All these elements depend, as I already said. Therefore, here it is discussed. Here is an objection. Well, it is not correct to say that the sacred testimony leads one to the highest good through propounding the truth of the epistemic instrument, etc. It is because it is not possible to understand the nature of the epistemic instrument. You call it the epistemic instrument, the pramana, but its nature is kind of undefined. You never know how it works. Also, that is the truth of the epistemic instrument depends on the truth of the valid cognition. What is a valid cognition? It's very difficult to say, because validity, is neither extrinsic nor intrinsic. That is, it is neither sui generis, it is neither self originated, if I translate it. That is neither swataha, the source of it is neither something else, nor is it that very thing. So it is very difficult. I'm not getting into it because this is a very technical issue. The point is, where does the validity come from? What's the source of the validity of my cognition? Here is a snake. According to Gangesha, the source is always outside the cognition. So, but there is a huge debate on that. We are not getting into it. We are interested in the type of questions here. So the objection continues. What is the point of knowing the validity of a cognition? The validity is not your concern. Your concern is the object. It is not invariably connected with an effort to act. I do something because I think about the object. I look at the object and I act. Where is the validity of cognition? Who cares about it? Further, one spends a lot of money and energy for achieving something, and one acts, after spending a lot of, one's energy and money. What is the motivation? The object itself. It is never validity of any cognition or anything. So it is rubbish, right? You need not talk about validity, which is one, not required, two, which is obscure, which cannot be defined. So this was the objection. Gangesha answers to that by saying, no. Following the doubt about validity of a piece of cognition comes ascertainment. It must be this. Ayam etad iti. This ascertainment, which is part of the unhesitating act. This translation is by Stephen Phillips. Nishkampa pravritti, which is part of the unhesitating act of the subject, depends on the certainty of validity. What does it mean? Let's try to understand it through this. Now, there is water. It seems at least there is water somewhere in the middle of nowhere. And here is an old man, but for him, walking is like paying a price, right? So, and also he's thirsty. So what should he do? He has the cognition, this is water. But then, because going there is difficult for him, he also has a doubt. Is it really water? Is that really water or a mirage? Should I go? Should I walk? Because that is not very easy for me. Then somehow the doubt gets dispelled. Because he sees that, well, fishes are moving in that, playing around in that thing, which seems to be water. So somehow the doubt is dispelled, right? The doubt about validity. Therefore, because the doubt about the validity of his cognition has been dispelled, he now thinks that my cognition is valid. That's the intermediate step which happens. It is not the object, because I don't have access to the object. I have access to my cognition. And somehow my doubt about the validity of the cognition is dispelled. Then only I act, right? With a lot of difficulty, then that man moves towards the object. And it does whatever it does. Still, there is no guarantee that it is water. But here the point is, that validity is a very important thing, because unless I'm sure that my cognition is valid, I don't act confidently. I don't spend money on it, right? I do not spend my energy. So it is always important, as the opponent said, that the object is important, not the validity of cognition. That's not true. Now, in order to do that, Gangesha will do the most rigorous, philosophical activity, logical activity. He will write Pramanyavada, which is a very, very difficult topic, whatever. So now this similar thing applies to somebody who is seeking salvation. The seeker somehow has to believe that what the Shastra says is true. Salvation happens, and I need to look for it. And personally, I think, I don't know whether it happens or not, who cares? But I think, what else shall we do with life? So, it's okay that we look for it and we spend our life doing that. And probably there is light at the end of it. So that will be a great thing. If not, still we can have a good life looking for it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for enlightening us regarding the Nyāya conception of knowledge and salvation. And it is very clear, and I hope that our audience has got complete access to the whole of points which are thrown for debate. So the crux of the talk, if I dare to say, is that we want to get rid of all kinds of dukkha, absolutely. And for that, the Nyāya proposal is to know the self. And it is the knowledge of the self in its real sense leads us to salvation. And I recall Udayanacharya's remark in the very beginning of his Atma Tattva Viveka, where he says that Pratiyogi aniyogitaya cha atma eva tattatah geya. And it is that knowledge which leads us to salvation. So I'm sure our distinguished guests and other students must have some curiosities, some queries. So now the discussion is open for question answer session. So you're most welcome to raise your questions and clarify if there is any doubt anywhere. So anyone who wants to ask, for the sake of just ordering, if you just raise your hand, or that is not related to our senior professors, they can just turn on their mic and ask their questions. Others, if you want to ask question, you please raise your hand and I will see the order. So may I request, first of all, our ex-dean from the university, Professor Dinabandhu Mukhopadhyay. He was very kind to join the session, and he was throughout the session. So Professor Mukhopadhyay, if you have some observations on this. Sir, your mic is off.
Yeah, now it's okay.
Yes, sir. Please.
Yeah, it's very really. I was engrossed practically. I had no word. Totally, I was internalizing myself all the entire episode. But you know that I'm a learner, as usual every time I say, because I'm an indirect scholar of this subject. I never got an opportunity to learn this subject as in a very in regimented way. However, I feel, from my basic understanding, salvation, if it is synonymous to mokṣa, so I understand according to our Hindu, theory of mokṣa salvation. And if I refer to Srimad Bhagavad Gita, there are three important, parameters. For example, to get it, one is karma, then bhakti, and jnana. These three parameters, normally, whatever I understand, action, then your devotion, and your wisdom. But I have sometimes I feel by dichotomy whenever I try to explore a little about from Buddha's philosophy. That is what he says, that enlightenment. Enlightenment means the end of sufferings. So can we, equate that this knowledge or wisdom and enlightenment can be used in a synonymous way, or is there any kind of extension or alteration addition so that I can enrich myself out of this dichotomous, situation? Very often I come across. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to put forth my, views on this.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Nirmalya, would you like to respond to Professor Mukhopadhyay?
Thanks, Professor Mukhopadhyay. Actually, I also had the same question for a very long time. And what I understand is, first of all, this is from one perspective, my presentation. But my understanding is this: enlightenment is another way of looking at it, because suffering is darkness. So metaphorically, when that is dispelled, I'm enlightened, right? And we look for this light. The main thing is we want to get rid of suffering, and that's the end of it. So in that sense, it is enlightenment. So I think, and Srimad Bhagavad Gita, as far as the 3 ways of concerned, I would say, look, if I could do it without doing all the logic shopping, I would have done it. So where does it originate? I didn't have a chance to mention that. You see, it comes from Shastra once again. It comes from Veda, Upanishad. Because Upanishad says that Atmava ade shrotavyo mantavyo nididhyahitavyo va. You must hear about the self, and then you have to reason about the self. Finally, you concentrate on the newfound truth. Finally, you get, so you understand, you get to know yourself. So Shrotavya is hearing the text, right, about Atma, the theme is about Atma. But Mantavya, Manana, involves all the logic shopping. Is it true? Is it fine, right? So if just by listening to it, I could get salvation. I would not need all these logic shoppings and whatever. For example, in Nashkarma Siddhi, Acharya Sureshwara talks about a Vanechara, a forest man called Vishakata. He hears somebody tell his disciple Tattvamasi, and just by listening to that, Vishakata gets salvation. He gets enlightenment just by listening to it, because he didn't have any mental block, right? But we ordinary people, we have a lot of mental block, which has to be kind of repelled, which has to be destroyed through the logic shopping, knowledge, what do you call it, Nyāya, and all that stuff. So yes, one way is bhakti, as you mentioned, one way is karma. Here is one way, right? Unreaching. So definitely we are not talking about, all the ways of attaining salvation, but one. Here is the intellectual for, the path to salvation.
Thank you, Dr. Nirmalya. I am really very much thankful to you for your kind, giving clearing my doubt about this. If you kindly allow me a little extension I can have on this issue.
Yes, please, sir.
Actually, what I understand is okay, that's fine. But is it again, because it's a, philosophy and this subject is it's an ocean practically. And in this one session, I think it's very difficult for any scholar or the stalwart to give a complete view. According to that, this karma is okay. Karma, then that is bandhan and asakti. These 3 things again coming over there. So bandhan is bondage, and asakti, this kind of we understand that kind of attachment again, because bondage and attachment, I feel that these are not synonymous. So in this way, how we can establish a link with this theory of salvation, as because karma, that's action, so we have to do it. And there in Gita completely there is one chapter, karma yoga. So this is one there. Again, Gyan Jog, another chapter, and okay, the Bhakti Jog, another chapter is there. Gita completely is there. But here that specific explanation or no discussion about this kind of that bandhan and asakti, karma to is already is there. And clearly we understand that Gita's message to everybody that karmanna badikaraste ma phaleshu kadachan. So it becomes a part of our life practically. If you can practice that, naturally it will lead us towards the path of salvation. This is like that. But in this process or in this cycle, what is the role of this bondage and this asakti, and how to, if it is there, how to get ourselves free from bondage? Because bondage is, again, I feel it's a little duty, okay, kartavya. So therefore, it comes on this way. Because I don't have any clear idea, clear knowledge about all this. I feel very tired sometimes. So this occasion, I feel that if you kindly throw some lights over that, it will help me a lot.
Yeah, that's a very sort of relevant question, definitely. As I said, we are talking about one path. That is the path of enlightenment. Not actually, that would be another, right? As Bhagavan described in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, that's a different way. Now, the way I'm talking about is cognitive. That is, I will work on my cognition, on my mind rather. Instead of working on things, I need to work on my mind, right? How do I do it? The point is, as you said, asakti, yes, rather dvesha or moha, the attitude towards things. These are due to my misconception, because I think that there is nothing else, right? These are the things that give me pleasure. I define these are the things that give me, pain, and these are things I don't require, right? Now, these are misconceptions. These are misconceptions because these have nothing to do with my sort of ultimate bliss or with my ultimate life or whatever it is. So you work, instead of working on other things, in this case, you work on your misconceptions and you dispel those. Just by dispelling those, you put an end to your asakti. And through that, you put an end to the artha, that is samsara, which is the object of desire and aversion and mindless attachment, right? Once you don't have that, you don't act. And because you don't act, so this is destroying the action or the activity or karma through cognition. So this is a cognitive kind of a cognitive fight against the bondage. And what is bondage? Now, this is an assumption of Indian philosophy. Most Indian philosophers believe that your activities kind of cause some kind of bondage, right? So now, if I do not have any activity, I do not have any bondage. In the karma yoga, the whole story is different, right? But in this very narrative we just talked about, the whole story is different. It is the internal working, right? I rather destroy my attitude towards objects, right? My craving or my hatred. Once I get rid of it, I will not have any attachment. Therefore, I will not act in a passionate way, right? I will act without passion. I will have just as they call it, the jivana yoni prayatna. I will not have anything else. And that's it. And I get rid of that because I don't have any more bondage. So I think I was trying to answer that question.
Thank you, sir. Sir, you are muted, sir. Professor Mukhopadhyay, we can't hear you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Guha, for your simplification of such a, difficult and complex theory. And definitely, it is very helpful to a novice like us to understand a little bit about this, because it's not that it's such a subject. It needs a lot of So yes. Therefore, I really thank you for entertaining this question, and thank you, Dr. Tiwari, giving me this privilege.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir. Now, in fact, one question is coming from Srinivasan Krishnamurthy, sir. He wanted to know, in fact, you have already partially answered his question. He is asking, because there is an intimate relationship between epistemological knowledge and then salvation in the Nyaya philosophy. So instead of getting into logic and all these epistemological discourse, why not follow the Sankhya Yoga path and sadhana? So why to get troubled in logic? Rather, we can get into direct knowledge of self by following yoga, etc. So if you wish to add something to this, this question is coming from Srinivasan Krishnamurthy.
Yes. Excuse me, before that, I would like to substantiate that in Patanjali Yoga Sutra, in 4th chapter, 34th Sutra, Patanjali Maharishi says, Purushartha Sunyanam Gunanam Pradipasavaka Kaivalyam Svapratishtata Vasidi Sakti. That means liberation is the play of constituent qualities of nature. To get rid of that, liberation is a supreme power of pure consciousness. So the power, the principle is only to get rid of sufferings. That is what Kapila Maharishi and Patanjali also says. In Nyāya philosophy, why this circumventing and then going around and beating around the bush and then coming again back to that, that's only knowledge is. But can you please tell me, a normal human being would be able to understand Nyāya philosophy and then try to get salvation through this? This is my simple, doubt.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, my approach to this would be something like this. It is universal, perhaps, that all of us want to get rid of suffering, no doubt. So that way salvation becomes at least a universal demand. But then the prescriptions are not universal. So Samkhya Yoga prescribed for a set of people. That's fine. For them, it's okay. But there are people who are, for example, take Buddhism. Some people are annadhura, right? For some people, intellect, this logic chopping is very important. And some people are dantadhura. For them, vipassana, that is dhyana, is important, not the logic chopping part. I think that is true about almost everything. So there is no one prescription that works for all. Some people would like to do it following the intellectual path, right? That is the Nyāya logic chopping. Now, in Vedanta also, you find something very similar, because this mantra of yo, look at this thing, this comment, mantavyaha. So atma, mantavyaha. Now the point is, what is manana? So what is the Vedantic interpretation of that? You have asambhavana and viparita bhavana about the self. You think that the self is not Brahman, right? That is viparita bhavana. The self is non-Brahman. You also think that is the self is not the ultimate reality. You also think, it is not possible for the self to be the ultimate reality, right? That is called asambhavana. Now, you need logic in order to get rid of all these things. That is why, right? So now that is also a path of, an intellectual path, like Nyāya. Some people require, I think, this kind of a prescription. So, Patanjali and Kapila have made one prescription from one sort of, one group of people. And so we have our own prescription. So that is like, that is how there are various prescriptions, various medicines for, for various patients. That's what I think.
But unfortunately, sir, I'm sorry to interfere here. Unfortunately, the Nyāya philosophy does not speak about the consciousnesses at all. That is what I am perplexed.
The Nyāya philosophy, I didn't hear what you said.
No, the Nyāya philosophy doesn't speak about the consciousness state of the mind. That is what I am.
You are right, sir. But for all of them, the ultimate goal is the destruction of suffering. So if they can show that, they're done with their job. Yes, they do not think that the self is conscious, eternally conscious. That is what the Advaitins would. Even the Advaitin would say it is consciousness itself, right? Not, it is not conscious, it is consciousness itself. But that's what, you are very right. This is another thing. So the Naiyāyika self is different from the Advaitin self. And also it is different from the Samkhya self. That is very right. But at least the Naiyāyika has an account to show as to how you can destroy your suffering. That's it. There is nothing more.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is-
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Krishnamurti, sir. Thank you for asking the question and being with us.
Thank you. Sir.
And of course, we have different systems of Indian philosophy, and each system has its uniqueness and its proposal. And the Nyāya has got this uniqueness of knowing the reality through discursive method, through the method of epistemology. And that is the uniqueness of the Nyāya tradition. Thank you, sir, for asking this question. So let me now ask philosophy, technology, you have written. Please turn on your mic and ask your question. You please
sir,
introduce, because we see your name, philosophy, technology.
Sir, actually it is from Google. Google records it. I'm Mudassir Tantre. Hello? Am I audible? Hello?
Hello, we can't hear you properly. Actually, can you please start?
Hello? Am I audible?
Hello.
Hello?
Yeah, please.
Hello?
You please ask your question, please.
Yeah, please ask.
Yeah. Sir, actually, you have given this example of to differentiate between valid and invalid knowledge. And you can have example like rope and snake, marriage and sea. So how we differentiate between a valid and invalid knowledge in these cases? In the case of when we have Vyapti, just like we have fire and smoke.
So the answer to that, once again, I didn't want to get into this. As I said, it's a very intricate topic. The validity has to be actually ascertained, or invalidity, through some activity. I actually hint at that, but I didn't elaborate on that. So the point is, I have the cognition, this is water. I go there, I find something there, I drink that, and that quenches my thirst. From that, saphala pravritti, that is my epistemic expectation is fulfilled. From that fulfillment, I infer, therefore my cognition was valid. Had it not been fulfilled, I would have said, I would have inferred, concluded that my cognition was invalid. So this is the test of validity. Yes.
But that is observation, sir. That is observation. If we observe something, then why we need infer? If we observe something, just like we observe things that smoke, where there is fire, there is smoke. This is observation.
I don't know what you mean by observation, but my point is, first you have some kind of perceptual cognition that there is water, right? You don't know whether that is water or not, but you have some expectation, right? If you go and check, if your pravritti, like whatever you do, the action you do after having known that object is somehow fulfilled, then that is water. If not, then it is not, right? Your minimal expectation is the thing I see has waterness as a property, and waterness resides in it through inherence. This is your minimal expectation. And if your action is kind of satisfactory, then you conclude, therefore, because my pravritti, my activity is successful, therefore my cognition was valid. So this is how you know the validity of your cognition. This is the Nyāya theory of it.
Sir, cognition is already valid.
Yes.
Cognition is the attribute of mind. That is already valid. The invalidity.
Mr. Mudassir, please listen to the speaker first.
Yeah.
And then once he has done explaining, then only ask. Don't interrupt him. Please. Okay. It is not for argument, okay? Sorry.
Yeah.
Just listen to him what he has.
So the point is here, when I see something and I have the cognition, this is water, the internal structure of it is, as I said, this property holder relation trial. It is basically what I understand is, in this object there is waterness, right? So now if it is valid, then in that object whichever appears as the qualificant of my cognition, actually that thing has the qualifier property, that is waterness. So this is the definition of validity. Tadvati tat prakarka anubhavaha parama. So what is a valid cognition? a cognition whose qualificant really has the qualifying property or the qualifier, right? For example, when I look at a mirage and I recognize this is water, in this case, that mirage, that part of sand, that part of sand dune, whatever you call, that part of land or desert does not have waterness, right? So that abhavavati tat prakaraka anubhavaha. Although waterness appears in my cognition, it is actually not there in the object I experience, right? So that is invalidity. So there are two things: one, validity, and two, the knowledge of validity. So that's why we need to be a little careful while talking. Are we talking about validity or the knowledge of it, right? So how do I have the knowledge of validity? Only when I go and test. And what about validity? By definition, it is tadvati tat prakaraka. That is, whichever qualifier I experience in my cognition must exist in the thing I perceive, right? Beyond the object. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I think this difference between validity and knowledge of validity will certainly clarify the point to Mudassir ji. And you have, sir, very rightly pointed out in the beginning itself that Nyāya epistemology is a pragmatic epistemology.
Right.
So the moment we satisfy our thirst by drinking water, all the doubts regarding whether it is water or not disappears. And it is that pragmatism which gives a final say regarding the knowledge of validity. So do we have any more curiosity from any participant?
Tiwari sir, may I ask one?
Yes, please.
Comment rather, due to my ignorance, I might be wrong, but I just want to put my thought before Professor Guha for his comments. One thing is that he's calling it from Nyāya perspective, it is epistemology, and couple of things in between Nyāya that actually in context of what we teach, and we have been discussing already, that we teach in value education, we teach that there is always this misconception of that we identify ourselves with the body, and also that pleasure is the only goal that we have, or we can keep on having pleasure. So in Nyāya we have that it becomes more clear that we get more and more evidence, textual evidence, that it is also supported by our classical texts. But at the same time, usually we attribute Buddhism for a lot of these about psychological exploration of human mind. But listening to or while hearing or listening to rather to Professor Guha, can we call it rather an epistemology of salvation? Psychology of salvation would also be applicable. I mean, would it be a correct description of what you have said?
Very, very relevant question, Madhu. Very relevant question. Now, I completely agree with you. If you look at the Prachina Nyāya, the classical Nyāya, this is both psychological and kind of epistemological. So it's a mixture. It's a hybrid thing, right? The moment you bring raga, dvesha, moha, and all that stuff, the moment you talk about misconceptions in this way, right, and the moment you talk about your emotive expectation and stuff, you are practically doing some kind of psychology. So yes, it's a hybrid thing. But then once again, Madhu, I would like to also add, if you look at the works of Nyāyikas, like Gangesha and then Raghunatha, Gadadhara and Jagadisha and all these great masters, you'll find that the tendency shifts. It as if it now wants to get rid of psychology and it wants to do, in essence, more so-called pure, epistemology, isn't it? So yeah, I completely agree with you. But Prachina, so you rarely find that, Jagadisha would be talking about raga, dvesha, and all that thing. For them, it is important to talk about, the visheshana, that is the qualifier, qualificant, and relation, and all that stuff. Very little of psychology remains with them. So that is the reason Navya Nyāya, it is not so very much moksha centric. But till Gangesha you find the tendency, but after that it's kind of it fades a bit. So it becomes more like pure logic, pure epistemology, but definitely Prachina Nyāya is a hybrid system. You can easily call it a psychology also, like a psychological science and an epistemological science. That way, it's very difficult to the difference, the line, the border line is most of the time blurred in the ancient texts. I completely agree with you. Your voice is disconnected, but this gathered from whatever I can.
Okay. Thank you, because we have unstable internet connection.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That is the question.
It's good. Thank you, Madhu. Thank you. In fact, when you talked about dharma, dharmin, and relationship, so one very small curiosity comes in my mind, if you please allow, Nirmalya sir.
Oh, of course, please.
This is related to Apvarga, and as we know in the Nyāya Sutra, we have 12 prameyas, and Apvarga is one of the prameya. So do we have the same structure, dharma, dharmin, and relationship in order to know what is Apvarga, or it has got some other structure?
Now, once again, this question, I would treat this as a historical question. You see, this is how this dharma dharmi sambandha triad, this is what we bring, especially the Naiyāyikas, the Samanatantra philosophers bring in order to understand the epistemic expectation, right? The pravritti, right? And the pravritti samarthya, the fulfillment of it. But this is definitely not how Vātsyāyana talked about it. He would really distinguish between dharma, dharmi, sambandha, isn't it? He is not so very sort of clear as far as these things are concerned. I took help from the Samanatantra philosophers as far as this is concerned, especially Annam Bhatta. I'm not saying Naiyāyikas, but Samanatantrikas like Annam Bhatta and Vishwanatha and all these great thinkers. So as far as Apvarga is concerned, if you want to put it in that scheme, it would be the abhava. So as they say, that can be gathered also from the sutra. It is dukkha atyanta bhava, not pragabhava, right? That is the reason. So dukkha pragabhava is all the time there. It is very common. What is pragabhava? It is the a priori absence of it. So before the baby is born, it is absent, right? But the baby will be born. So moksha is not just an ordinary absence of dukkha. It is the dukkha atyanta bhava, pragabhava asamanakali. So that's the definition of it. It is that kind of an absence of dukkha, that kind of an absence of suffering, which does not coexist with any prior absence. That means even the possibility of having suffering is not there, right? So if the absence of suffering coexists with the absence of the possibility of suffering, then we call that state of mind moksha. So definitely we need, another thing here, this abhava analysis will come here. Abhava and its pratiyogi, that is its counterpositive. So here moksha is basically an abhava, an absence which is located in the self, and the pratiyogi, the counterpositive of that would be dukkha. And the pratiyogita vachedaka would be dukkhatvam, or you call it bandhatvam. Same thing, right? Because everything is a bondage and everything is dukkha at the end. So this would be this kind of tripartite analysis of it. You require now abhava. For example, ghatabhava, that is the absence of thought, is understood on the ground, will be understood as the absence having groundness as its limiter of counterpositiveness. You call it ghatatva pratiyogita nirupita bhava, which is located on the ground, right? So you can say that bhutale ghatatva pratiyogita nirupita bhava. This is the tripartite analysis of it. And then the abhava resides, the absence resides in the self through the swarupa sambandha, through the peculiar relation. We are not going to get into it. And the relation of absence, the absential relation, sambandha here would be inherent, samavaya. So, and in a little fuller description of that would be samavaya sambandhavachinna dukkha dukhatvavachina pradiyogita nirupita bhava atmani. That would be the swarupa of moksha. And also we have to also add that it should be pragabhava asmanakarina, and this excludes the possibility of having dukkha again. So it's, the atyanta bhava having this structure would be this. I think
that's wonderful. Very nice. So do we have any other curiosity from any participant? Simran? So if not, then this is, I certainly say that this has been a wonderful session for all of us, those who are new to philosophy and also those who are already in philosophy. So it was such a lucid description and very nice presentation, I must say. So towards the end, I will request Dr. Madhumangal Chaturvedi to offer a vote of thanks formally to the speaker and all our guests and Professor Mukhopadhyay. So over to Dr. Madhu.
Thank you, Dr. Tiwari. So first of all, I think we should, on behalf of School of Philosophy and Culture, Srimata Vaishno Devi University, I would like to express our gratitude to our funding agency, Indian Council of Philosophical Research, for their generous grant to conduct their study circle. Then our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Ravindra Kumar Sinha, for his able guidance and encouragement for all such activities, the administrative staff, registrar office, and all the participants present here, those who could join. And obviously, without the speaker, who is now, in a way, our inspiration also in terms of the way he is doing philosophy and research and publishing, because we always find that as far as publication is concerned, quality publication is a really difficult thing. But the way he's presenting Indian philosophy to the scholars in the especially the reputed journals like Journal of Indian Philosophy is very much encouraging for us as well. Of course, it does not mean that I'm going to publish anything in my lifetime in JI's Journal of Indian Philosophy, but it means that, of course, I can also relatively do something of that nature, of that is something of that in the same vein, I guess. And of course, our Dr. Tiwari and our head, Mr. Samantha Sarthi Sharma, and Dr. Tiwari in particularly for his all the initiatives that he has taken for the school on behalf of school, irrespective whether he is head or he is not, and all our distinguished the participants, Dr. T. Mukhopadhyay, earlier Professor Sharma, and any others, those whom I did not know, and I have seen them first time here online. So it's also beauty of online that we get to see people whom you usually would never meet, because of offline it is very difficult. Everybody does not get to all the places all the time, but online it is convenient, but it brings other inconveniences as well. And but despite all that, it cannot be normal. It cannot be a new normal, but usually it should be celebrated as another platform for discussion, which has enabled us more like a global village in a true sense for academicians, that now online every month or on once in a while we can have this exercise. And we are really grateful for Dr. Guha for his valuable time, and we really thoroughly enjoyed his talk. And in fact, while I was looking at his picture, I remembered when I was, I think long back, I heard him play and sing. He's a wonderful, I think, vocalist, as well as he's, you can see he can play veena. So Carnatic music he has trained, and he's a very trained musician. I wish he could deliver someday, visit us, and not only just deliver philosophy talk, but also, and in all sincerity, I say that he will deliver one day, maybe some musical recital as well. Because once he delivered, he recited something when we was there. I was there. I happened to be in his company. I was lucky enough, and that sound was still reverberating. Bhavani Dayani, I remember still. So this has, I mean, this much mark his voice has left. And one more special thing I would like to say is that not only he told me was that some people usually, I think from Ramakrishna Mission, told him that when he looked like Swamiji when he was young, that is Swamiji Vivekananda. And I said, oh, maybe, but one of my friends, when he saw him, he immediately said, he looks like Swami Vivekananda. I mean, that kind of similarity he has. So he is man of many talents, I would say. And he is, so I appreciate and for his time and all of us together, and hopefully we'll be able to meet him personally, invite him personally as soon as the things at the time this pandemic is announced as over and normalcy resumes. And on behalf of School of Philosophy and Culture, once again, I thank you all for being here. Over to Tiwari sir for final conclusion.
Thank you, Madhu, for these kind words, and I wish that Nirmalya sir will certainly appreciate. And if Professor Nirmalya, you don't mind, kindly turn on your camera just for a few seconds so that I can just click a snap so that it can be in the record.
So unfortunately, the camera doesn't work.
Oh. So anyway,
I also try to repair it because no one can. Yeah. But anyways, Madhu, thanks for your very kind words, and I also remember. So it's great that I saw Madhu after such a long time. Vijay and Professor Tiwari and many others. That was a pleasure. Means after this pandemic thing, it was really kind of consolation for me. Great. Thank you very much.
Same here. Take care, sir.
So thank you, Nirmalya sir. It is really very nice to hear you, and then we will continue our discourse. And the next meeting, we are looking for Dr. Nilanjan Das. I hope you know him, Dr. Nirmalya.
Nilanjan and I, we studied together for 13, 14 hours a day. And that
Great. So he will be.
I left for England, we used to read together. We used to read logic, mathematics, and Advaita Siddhi. Very peculiar combination, but yeah, we used to read for months. So, without any fail, we used to do that.
He promised to deliver a talk in December, maybe in the first week.
Right.
So, so in fact, very honestly, I see you and Dr. Nilanjan Das as the very promising scholar from India, presenting Indian philosophy to the whole world in a very intelligible and nice manner. And I just wish that I learned from both of you, and we will be in touch with all of you. So we wish to have a continuous.
Learning is mutual, Professor Tiwari. All of us learn from each other. Means those days when Nilanjan was a kid, I thought that he thought that he was learning from me, and I told him, look, not that one is. We are reading together. Means we should read David Kaplan and most of those papers. We started with Russell and then went on to read all those very tough logic papers. And I told him, today you think that you are learning, but that's not true. Both of us are learning together, which was the truth. And now I write to him every now and then. He answers very rarely. He's a very moody person, but that's okay. Whenever he answers, it's always enlightening. So he's like my younger brother, and it's wonderful that he has agreed to give a talk.
Yes. So I'm very eagerly looking for the date when he delivers talk. In fact, I am 50. I am older than all of you, But I see a lot more things to learn from both of you, and certainly I keep on reading the articles which he published in different journals. I keep on browsing his personal website, and also I have downloaded all your papers which are published in Journal of Indian Philosophy, and I wish to copy the style so that I can also get some opportunity to get published in Journal of Indian Philosophy. So certainly your guidance would be very helpful for all of us here, and we will keep in touch with you. And I am really grateful to Professor Mukhopadhyay, who has been throughout the whole lecture, and then he was a great source of inspiration when he was a professor here, and still we are in touch with him. And once he left this place, I think this is our first meeting, that is a virtual meeting. And I received, sir, your blessings on the day of Dashara. So thank you, sir, very much. And thank you, Dr. Srinivasan, for joining us today.
Yes.
Iqbalji, thank you.
Namaste.
Yes, namaste. Thank you.
Probably
Thank you
you
for
have
joining.
forgotten that we have spoken many times.
Yes.
Before pandemic.
I do remember.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to have your mobile number. If you can kindly message here in this box.
Sure, I'll send it through WhatsApp. I have your WhatsApp number. So,
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
yeah. Thank you
Thank you,
for.
Dr. Tiwari. Now I am taking leave. It is going to be
Yes, sir.
concluded.
Yes,
Already
sir.
concluded. And thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
giving me
Thank you, sir,
invitation.
for joining.
And I enjoyed and I learned a lot of things, So these are very, rare kind of, the program normally. And when I saw your caption, topic, that, creates some kind of appetite within myself. And that provoked me to be here. So thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Dr. Guha. I think down the line, some occasion maybe there we can meet in person also.
Oh, yeah.
And art is round, as you know. So, and it's a very good experience I gained from today and this evening. And thank you all. Now I'm taking leave. And once again, thank you, Dr. Madhu, and
Thank you, sir. Thank you for
Sumanth Sarathi, all that. I think he may be available there. I don't know whether he's there or not. Thank you very much once again. Thank you all. Srinivasan sir. I think I will come and we meet in person. And because I'm very much, I'm a caravan, so I travel almost here and there. So I think sometime I'll maybe, happen to be in your, knocking at the door of your residence in Madras. So
Yes.
I will be coming. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Good night, sir.
Good night. Good night.
Okay, Professor Nirmalya, then let us close this session. Thank you very much for being so kind to address us. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you. This was a wonderful session. Very nice.
Okay, thank you. Good night. Okay, thank you, Madhu.